On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Sue Nallapeta. She is the CTO at Trusted Health. We're going to be talking about how to leverage AI in your product, really about data quality, how it actually benefits your end user. I know she has a couple of good examples we're going to be talking about. And I know a lot of companies are implementing, integrating AI solutions into it. That's what everyone wants to do. But you have to have some of the framework, some of the plumbing, that data structure correct before you can do that. And I know Sue's kind of going down that path and process, and I'm excited for you to be on to share. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Amir, for having me here. Excited to talk about AI. That's the talk of the town right now.
Well, let's talk of the town. Everyone wants to get there really fast, maybe 6 months ago fast, but hey, we're all here and we're doing better for it. And I guess, the main point of AI, and I guess what every, stakeholder's trying to do is bring more value to their customer. They want better business outcomes. They want the adoption piece to happen. And those are all the end goals. But to get there, there's some things that have to happen. And from your perspective, before we dive in, just to have everyone understand, and I've been having the leaders do this, is because every product has a different way how AI is going to be used. Like at Trusted Health, tell everyone what the business does so we kind of understand how AI is going to be woven into the product.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a marketplace. We connect nurses with jobs. We mainly focus on travel industry as a whole. In addition to nurses, we also have allied professionals like radiology technicians and so on. We also have an enterprise side of the business where we directly work with health systems and hospitals to act as their software or like a vendor management system, as well as we provide what we call on-demand workforce, like the entire management and scheduling of it as well. So we have two parts, the marketplace as well as the enterprise side of the business.
Awesome. So when you're looking at AI, I guess before I ask the question, how far down the journey of AI and Trusted Health are you at right now?
I joined Trusted at the beginning of the year in January. So it's been about 9 months. And in terms of the AI itself, it has existed in different flavors. Ultimately, if you think about AI, it's about, as you said, solving a business need. One, it's whether, to make us more efficient, whether it's internal processes and employees and the time that they spend on something, or it is to really deliver value or revenue at a much faster pace than a human could possibly deliver. So at Trusted, a lot of our competitors are basically staffing agencies where there's a lot of human in the loop. There is a lot of human touch points. There are recruiters who are calling up nurses and basically saying, we have this job, and negotiating rates and prices and stuff. So when Trusted set out to build our platform, we focused on how can we modernize this? How can we bring everything to the forefront through the platform? How can we make it more self-serve where there is very less human touch? And if there is, they're actually talking to clinicians. We have nurses who are part of our customer success, so they can actually get help at any step of their journey versus a more of a recruiter pushing you to make a decision approach. So as part of that journey, we have had AI, whether to optimize a specific workflow. Most recently, we've had nurses just upload their resume, and we are going to break it all down and parse it out and fill out the entire profile. What's interesting in our industry is when I think about tech, it's like a mere LinkedIn profile is good enough when I apply for a job or if a recruiter is looking at our profiles. But in the industry, especially on the nursing side, they really need to fill out their robust profile. They need to upload all their credentials, every bit of the experience, specific to different specialties that they had. Also, they need to have 3 references and so on. So there is a lot of intake that we need to do, and it's very time consuming. And so anything that we can do to use AI to make that process faster and seamless is something that we really are trying to optimize. And then on the enterprise side, we've been working with a very large health system, really, as I said, trying to optimize their dynamic workforce. Essentially, they have nurses, they're always trying to figure out how to fill shifts. And we've been trying to use AI on that side to really predict what's the likelihood of this nurse picking up this shift and what should we price it at, so that they can really hospital can achieve their fill rate goals as well.
I imagine, yes. I could see the complications or the complexity in nursing skills, because they're not something you want to go learn on the job. If you know how to do a specific thing that's valuable to a certain type of procedure or environment, so you have to know that where that is. Lots of data, it seems. You mentioned when we spoke earlier, you said getting the data structured the right way is very important towards your AI strategy. I mean, I could probably argue it. Your data is structured the right way is necessary from the ground up, but even more so when we're talking about AI and we're talking about trying to find some of these optimal solutions. What does that mean, getting the data structured the right way?
Yeah, oftentimes I think what companies struggle with is either insufficient data or low quality data. When you think about any AI systems, like they need to be trained on a set of data to actually make any kind of prediction or assessment of providing a solution on a topic that they're tackling. So if companies like don't have the right data set, or it's not really structured in the format that can be consumed, but to really make sense of that, then that becomes a huge problem. Every company I've been in, there has always been like different flavors of data problems. Sometimes it's lack of data. Sometimes it's unreliable data where I'm not even collecting enough information about my customers to be able to really go and make sense of building the right solution for them. And sometimes it's just poor quality data. It's not structured in the right format. Sometimes there's duplicates. And we spend a lot of time labeling the data and making sure that it's in the right structure before we can even attempt some sort of solution. So this is this has become a consistent problem. There are a lot of tools trying to solve various pieces of this puzzle, but also some of these tools end up causing some of this problem. And one, my biggest experience has been with Segment, which is a Twilio product. It's a great product. It's really easy to get up and running. You start feeding all your events into Segment. It takes care of all the sources, connecting to various different sources and getting all the data. However, if we as a company don't have some sort of audit and governance mechanism in making sure that we are feeding only clean data into these tools and making sure it's structured in the right way, it can really get hairy and it can just blow up in front of us. And which is what has happened multiple times, where, if you don't have the right data dictionary, it always ends up having to do the cleanup exercise later.
It's interesting. Data governance, typically before AI, was it's such a negative connotation. People didn't like it. Not like it. They didn't like talking about it because there's a lot of no's. It's the data no police in a way. And now it's being embraced. It's anyone who wants the AI strategies. I need a data governance plan in place. How is that relationship quickly changing? I mean, you're the CTO. Data governance is now becoming very important to some of what you just said. How is that relationship evolving for you?
I think, it is the biggest priority for the company, to be honest. I think there are different pieces to it. It's, as I said, like the number one thing is like, what interaction data are you collecting about your customers? Like when nurses come on our platform, they're looking at jobs, they are like providing a ton of information about them, on their preferences. Like, how do we actually capture what they are giving us and also what they're not giving us, like just their interaction data and how they play around with our platform? Like, how do we collect all of that into like one source? So a lot of our focus, at least over the last several years, has been like streamlining that data and then also like, putting it in the warehouse, and then like really trying to figure out, okay, what type of business analytics layer do we need to create to make sense of this data so that we can make better business decisions. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other one is there is also data that we get from third-party systems or various other systems and sources we connect to. We have a CRM system. We use Salesforce, and we work with different managed service providers, and we use different vendor management systems that they have. So there is a lot of data that's coming across different sources. How do we collect all of that? And then how do we make sure that the data that we collect from our platform interfaces well with the data that we collect from third party? And how do we put it all together in a way that it makes sense for our business to make the right decisions? So that has been one of the biggest areas of focus for us. And it's like a never ending problem. We are always trying to break it apart and say, okay, let's solve this piece by piece. And some of it, we might have to parallelize and move fast. And some of it, like, let's take the time to really structure this the right way.
I guess in nursing, where there is I don't know, is there a finite set of skills? I guess, I don't know. I was going to ask you, how wide are the skill sets? Meaning, how many skills are we looking at? Is it, constant nuances that'll constantly keep having the model having to refine on those, or how does that look for the industry?
Yeah, and there are different specialties, and it is finite, but there are so many different nuances. There is a registered nurse, and then there is like various specialties just within that itself. And now you might be a labor and delivery nurse, and there are various specialties within that. So there is a lot of different preferences, but it's still a finite number. I think where it gets very interesting is now you have nurses, and then there is all these requirements about the jobs itself. And so now that combination becomes like, a huge factor of how do you make sure that, like, here are all these requirements that these hospitals are looking for, but some of the nurses that we have might satisfy n number of those. Like, it's always a unicorn if you can satisfy every one of those requirements. And then we'll have to make determination at any given point in time. It's like, how do we make sure that this is the right job for this nurse? And what's the likelihood that this nurse will get an offer if we were to submit them? And then how quickly should we be able to submit them? And then there is all these other suppliers that any hospital works with. So how do we make sure we are first in line? And then this profile gets noticed against all these skill sets, and how, what is the likelihood at the end of the day for us being able to place that nurse? So that is what brings the complexity. It's not the preferences or skill set of the nurses itself. It's how can we think about it as a whole ecosystem of our business problem, and how do we solve it in that context?
I don't know that much about the medical nursing recruiting, but I do know when you're dealing with the engineering manager, it's a back end role. They have a lot of commas. They have a comma. I'll take Java, comma Python, comma Go, comma. There's comma, comma, comma. Any of those, because obviously you want a wider net. When you're seeing, let's say, those type of jobs for a nurse where they have some flexibility of the person they. How intelligent will the AI be at some point to be able to determine how suitable and those nuances to substitute between those commas? Because I guess that's some of the complexity you just mentioned is, somebody's going to create a job that has a lot of commas because there's a lot of ors, and all of a sudden now, how do you identify the right person?
Yeah, I think there is no good way. I think the best things AI can do is always look at historical data. Like, let's do this manually, right? Like, as I said, there's nothing wrong in putting humans in the loop first and trying to do, I think before you build any good AI solution, sometimes you have to dogfood it. Sometimes you just have to come back to the basics and say, if I was a person, I'm going through this, what would I look for? And then really like get those insights and then use that within AI. And we have almost 5+ years of data. Like, we have placed thousands of nurses in all these facilities. So we can look at all of that data and then also use that as a factor to determine, okay, like, what type of nurse profile is more attractive to what type of jobs? And then what's the likelihood of this nurse ending up in this job? And how can we actually use that historical insight to be able to match more nurses to the right jobs, even if they don't satisfy all the requirements? So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other thing that becomes even more critical is, I think more and more nurses are getting burnt out and leaving nursing. And then there are not enough incoming nurses as well. So there's a general overall shortage in the industry. So what can we do to train more nurses, even if they may not have all the qualifications that's required for a specific job or a role? Like, can we actually provide some sort of, credit hours where they can like really enhance and enrich their education so that they can have additional experience that they gain through some sort of a training that we could use and then place them on those roles as well. So I think those are some big challenges as a industry and as a business that we have to tackle as well.
Absolutely. How's your job changing in terms of obviously you've had to, as the CTO, as a leader, you have to set roadmap, you have to have those conversations, and now AI is what everyone wants to hear about, internal, external. How is your job changing to field those questions more and more?
Yeah, it's so funny when I did my graduate school, when I came to the US almost like 15 plus years ago, my specialization was AI and natural language processing and machine learning. It was, when I think about it, it was so rudimentary. We would get super excited when we parse, pages and pages of text and make sense of it. And now you take that combined with like Chat GPT and Gen AI and large language models. The world has evolved so quickly. But my point is that AI isn't new. So there has always been like a flavor of AI that we always incorporate across, like for the various years. Like, we've been using AI in different ways. Sometimes, like, now there are AI tools that we use on a daily basis as engineers. We end up using GitHub Copilot, just to help assist. There are so many times where I have refined my document by feeding it to Chat GPT. Or even like, we have a lot of tools that, for video recording, like there are like AI agents that come and, listen to the entire conversation, transcribe and give you a summary and things like that. So AI is there in every part of your workflow and what you do. So it hasn't been new. It's just that there is a lot of noise around it now. So as a CTO, the one thing that I want to really focus on is how can we just cut out the noise and like, again, come back to the number one thing is like, what is the business problem we are trying to solve? Is AI the right solution? Most often, AI is not. And sometimes it's, you can achieve the same outcome through so many different ways. So, is this really the problem that we need to be solving with AI? And is that going to be like a competitive advantage, or is it going to be a differentiation if I actually invest my time using AI to really figure out how to solve this problem? So that's how I need to think through it. A lot of times it's just cutting through the noise, and in the industry you kind of see all these companies. It's like, oh, we have to do something with Gen AI because it's the leading thing right now. But do you have to? Like, you still have to solve the business problems and customer problems. And if Gen AI is the solution for it, go for it. Otherwise, let's not simply create problems to use AI.
Yeah, it's interesting that the noise around it, has increased so much that it is, I mean, it's moved the whole stock market and certain companies just based on this discussion. I guess as you're seeing things, and you've been in the AI for a long time, obviously Gen AI, we're looking like it's like evolution, as you mentioned. Are you going to start, or have you started, or what's your thoughts on tinkering with future solutions? Because obviously now we're seeing a rapid development of models. We're seeing more opportunities, competitors. I mean, that seems to that to be, I'm not in your position, but it seems to be like, oh, I got to keep an eye on a whole new thing, and I got to be ahead. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think you always have to be on lookout for what's trending out there, and will it be useful to us? And sometimes something that's available right now might not be helpful for us at this stage of the business, but there is always going to be like an evolution that any business goes through, and sometimes those becomes useful. So it's always important, at least for someone in my role, to like be on top of technology changes and trends, whether we apply it immediately or not. A lot of my time also goes in really like finding new vendors, talking to them, and like really understanding what solutions that they have to offer. Because one question that I always debate within myself is like, do we need to build something or can we buy? And I can't do that when I really need to make a decision in the next month, next quarter. So I have to be ahead. So a lot of times what I also do is, in addition to looking at technology trends that might be changing, also look at like the entire VC ecosystem, figure out like, what companies are getting funded, what's the tech behind it, why is it so interesting, and have a conversation with some of those companies to even understand what are they trying to disrupt and how is the industry evolving. We saw a huge evolution and changes in the DevOps culture and adoption, and a lot of tools came and it really changed the industry of how people think about it. Then QA was the next big cycle, meant from everybody wanting to create their own automation teams and using open source and building their systems, to now like really using one of these marketplaces that provide test augmentation for your company. So there are always interesting trends that you'll end up seeing, whether it's within how the VC ecosystem, or if it's general technology trends that some of these companies are discovering and publishing as well.
I guess last question, when it comes to, we've talked about business value. Obviously, you've talked about the data structure, data labeling. End of the day, customers, the actual benefits to them and potentially competitive advantage. And you mentioned, obviously, you have to get a resume to a hospital system or for a particular role in front. How does that, I guess, having a little bit of automation behind it, having the AI behind the solution, how does that help make that argument or that case that they should partner with you? Maybe it's speed, maybe it's accuracy. I'm not sure what it would be, but what's the selling point for a customer?
I think there are two things. I think one is the time, because if we look at our customer segment, the nurses are trying to find jobs, and then hospitals are really trying to fill their roles as soon as possible, because these are all bedside nurses, and within any department, like you can't just operate in a very constrained environment and not having enough nurses to support the patients that you have. So ultimately, it boils down to time to care. So if hospitals really are optimizing for time to care, like that, we have to work backwards and say, how can I make sure that we are delighting customers, getting them to make faster decisions, and then we are moving them through the funnel as fast as possible and putting them in front of these hospital systems so that they can make a decision and get them on board as quickly as possible. So I think that saving in terms of time ultimately really directly translates to saving in terms of dollars, because the more time the job is open, there are patients who are not getting care, and then hospitals are probably spending more money to get contingent staff to really like find other ways, or nurses are having to work overtime and they're getting burnt out as a result. So none of those are sustainable solutions. So time is money. I guess it comes back to the basics, and that's usually a good selling point to invest in AI.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we do technology recruiting. No one's going to, well, I would say generally, no one's going to suffer if an engineering hire was delayed by a week or two or a month. But in the case of nursing, I was thinking about it. I mean, you mentioned level of care. The speed at which a nurse can be hired directly does correlate to patient care, hospital system care, all those different things, because you need that nurse to run whatever OR or that doctor's office, whatever it is. It's kind of mission critical, as opposed to a lot of other areas where like, yeah, we could wait a month. It's okay.
Exactly. There is no waiting here. And there are also hospital rules that basically tell, like, I need to have this kind of patient to nurse ratio as well. And so if they have to maintain that, they have to be on top of assessing their needs upfront. And I think these are all the places where AI can really help. How do you do demand forecasting? How do you make sure that you're always lining up nurses so that like when the need opens up, you're actively filling them? So the problem space is endless, especially when it comes to healthcare. And it's like, if we can really use AI to speed up that entire process, I think the world will be a better place.
I was actually just thinking about you. Like, you've been there for 9 months. You said you've probably done a lot of learning about how nurses do their job. Then obviously you've held different roles, a different type of verticals in the past, but there's got to be some specific complexities to this one, and understanding the lingo. That's got a bit of fun learning curve.
Yeah, it's been an amazing learning curve for sure. the common theme for me has been marketplace businesses. I've mostly worked at consumer and marketplaces, but I worked in dating industry and rental marketplace, and now healthcare and nursing marketplace. But the type of care that nurses provide, and like just a lot of nuances and complexity within the industry, is mind blowing. And healthcare actually is. I didn't realize this when I was outside of healthcare. You kind of almost treat it as healthcare is old school, like they have all these old systems and things like that. But actually, healthcare as an industry is far more open to modernizing than any other industry. And like they're starting to see the value. And you have all these big, chief nursing officers and industry leaders within these health systems really advocating for change.
Awesome. Sue, you're busy. I know you got to get back to it, and I can't appreciate your time enough. I think it's been interesting just to. I think we could do a whole episode on the impact of the nursing and medical field itself, because obviously there's so many nuances to it. But thanks for sharing your background and insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a great discussion.
Absolutely. That's it for the episode. Again, different guests, different topic. If you like the topic, please share it with somebody else. It's really interesting. I think we could, like I said, dive really deep within just the vertical of nursing and the complexities, because as a business, I don't understand enough. So I'm fascinated by what you were saying. And if you do want me to find another topic for a particular guest, reach out, let me know. I'm always interested in seeing what you guys want to hear more about. Like, subscribe. Let me know something that you want me to fix, change, improve. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.